All right, let's talk about Daredevil season 1. Now, this is the first of the Netflix shows that were promised, the Marvel shows, the properties that were promised, which would be Daredevil, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, and Jessica Jones. And it would lead up to an Avenger type situation with the team, the Defenders. Daredevil was one of the first comic books I ever actually read. As you can see, I have a comic book back there of Daredevil. When I was a little kid, Daredevil was the first comic book I ever read. Kind of lived in a abusive situation. My mother worked two jobs and wasn't really aware of the situation, and Daredevil was my escapism. You know, she was a hard labor at home. We lived with relatives, and I would often get away from home, go around to like Eckerd's and drugstores or grocery stores. I'd pick up a Daredevil comic book. A lot of times I'd take off with that comic book, but most of the time I'd just stand around and read it in stores. And Daredevil, that was the comic book that really got me into comic books. Now, I haven't been so much into comic books in a long while as I'm personally reading comic books, but Daredevil was the one that started it all. And this show is absolutely amazing. I mean, the casting, I never heard of like Charlie Cox before this. He plays Matt Murdock, Daredevil. Absolutely exceptional actor. You really believe that he's blind. The way he portrays the character. The idea of a blind superhero was such an incredible thing from the beginning, anyway, for, handicapped people with such a disability. And in this show, it's not only a Daredevil show. In many ways, it's a Kingpin show, and I was really introduced to Kingpin through the Daredevil comic books and the '90s animated Spider-Man series, which Kingpin was a huge. He played a huge role on there. And I remember too the '90s team up episode between Spider-Man and Daredevil, trying to take down Kingpin together. Peter Parker was framed for a crime he didn't commit, and seeing Daredevil get his own show, it's absolutely beautiful. The intro for this show is absolutely beautiful. It's elegant, kind of classical, and it just builds this tension, this hype. It's absolutely incredible. All the actors, other than Charlie Cox, uh, you have Vincent D'Onofrio. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his last name. Uh, but the version of Kingpin depicted on here, this is equally an origin story for the villain as it is the hero. You see their childhood, their different traumas, their emotional backgrounds, the things that have really affected their growth and made them who they are today. Kingpin, even though he is an incredibly intimidating villain and threatening person, he has such a soft side that you don't usually get to see from villains. The unfortunate thing about villains is they never really get fleshed out because you only get so much time in a movie to focus on the hero's side of things, and villains usually typically come off very one dimensional. This show takes the time to explore both hero and villain and show it from both their perspectives, where the reality is in real life most bad people don't think they're wrong. They they think they're a good person. They think they're doing something right. And in this show, it really conveys that perspective through Kingpin. He's such a soft guy, and in here he meets his love interest, Vanessa, his wife in the comics, and this show has did a great job for all of the characters. Like, there are a ton of characters in here that are actually from a comic. Some of them are pretty big departures from who they are in the comics. Like Karen Page, for instance, in the comics, she's much more of a mess. But they allude to that in here that, she was a mess before they tuck her in, and she teams up with Foggy and Matt, sort of becomes their assistant as they're starting this, pro bono type business, this business really geared toward helping out the poor, which is very respectable, something very respectable from the comics itself. They want to be heroes, they want to save the world, and you get lots of their background. Uh, it's the relationship between Foggy and Matt is really beautiful. You also get to see Stick in here. He's portrayed really, really well. I mean, he comes off like such a dick, such an uncaring asshole, but kind of the Kill Bill style. And there are a lot of characters in here. The Owl is actually in here, but he's very different from the way he is in the comics. The Owl is he sort of takes the same. I mean, sort of has the same influence there and stuff. Like, for instance, in the comics, the Owl is typically he's like typically he was like a successful financer and investor, and uh they call him the Owl of Wall Street, and he's in this series here. He's Kingpin has this sort of stable of people from different groups, different areas of crime, all brought together in very Kingpin fashion. And his main man, Wesley, who I hear is sort of an obscure. Now, he's not a character I'm actually familiar with. He's a obscure character from the comics, though, I've been told. And on here, he really stands out and shines. Uh, I kept forgetting his name, and when they would say it, and there were times when I thought he might actually turn out to be Smythe, because he was like just Kingpin's right hand man. He was really exceptional. He really stood out in the crowd, and this character was really intimidating and really professional. Got the job done, and there's a reason he's Kingpin's best friend. So when things go south for him, when Kingpin ends up really hurt when he loses Wesley, and you can really feel his pain and stuff. And that's another thing. The character Karen, she's mostly lighthearted and bubbly in here. Uh, Not from the start. From the start, she comes from a situation where, you're wondering about her because she was in this really bad scene. And, uh, but later on in the series, she's the one who actually kills Wesley, shoots him, and she makes a comment about that's not the first person she's shot before. So it alludes to all this darkness that's just sort of brushed under the rug for later development. That it's there. You get hints at things, and this show is just absolutely amazing. I mean, there are tons of other characters in here, sort of. Melvin Potter, Gladiator from Daredevil comics. In the show, he's the one who makes the suit for Daredevil. In the comics, he's a supervillain, but in the show, uh, he is on the wrong side of Daredevil. He's the guy who makes like the Kevlar suits and stuff for Kingpin, and Daredevil enlists him to make the costume, and the costume he makes is absolutely incredible. My only one gripe though is that I think it would have been nice if he made him a yellow costume at first, because Daredevil's blind. He wouldn't recognize the color. He'd go out there like, at, that's something that happens in the Daredevil comics. One of his early comics is like, one of his early costumes It's a yellow costume, and because he's blind, he doesn't exactly realize that it's yellow. And I just think it would have been funny to do kind of an inside joke about that in here, but uh, they didn't do that. I did like what they did with the Potter character, even though it is kind of a departure from the comics. That, in the comics, he does actually become like a supporter for Daredevil after his villain days. Um, they're battling Jack. They had him in here. They depicted him really great. The background, the whole origin of Daredevil, the whole origin where the toxic waste like spills on him and in his eyes. It's absolutely incredible the way they pulled that off, and there is so much in here. They have the cop Brett Mahoney. He has a reoccurring role throughout the whole season, but all these characters are characters that exist in the comics. Like also Matt, he often visits the Catholic Church and does like the Catholic Church, and sets in confessional and talks to the father there, and that's another prominent character from the comics. There's so many characters. There's Madame Gaio. She she sort of alludes there's more to her than meets the eye, with her heroin that she's selling on the streets that her people package. It has the steel serpent symbol, and when things are going south and stuff, she's talking about she's going back home, and I can't remember. But somebody asked her where's that or whatever, or they said China or something, and she said it's much further than that, hinting that she is from one of the seven capital cities of one of the seven capital cities of heaven, which is that bleeds into Iron Fist. But there's Josie's bar, and there's just all kinds of things in here. Really, there's mob villains in here that are from the comic books. You see things like Roxanne Oil, and you have characters like Ben Ehrlich. Now they did change up the character in the show. They race changed. I'm not really a fan of race changing because to me that's kind of like I have videos on that kind of stuff, but I actually really did like the actor and his portrayal. And there was a really shocking moment. What happens to him when he pisses Kingpin off for embarrassing him while he's out on his date? This was a really incredibly shocking moment. He had such a strong role in this show, and you believed he might have such a bright future in the rest of this sort of universe. But it ends pretty brutal for him, pretty shockingly, and that to me really caught me off guard. Ben he's heavily featured in the comics. If I remember correctly, he works for the Daily Bugle, and he has a lot of stuff to do with Spider-Man and all that, and just really, really amazing. He was really amazingly cast, and despite the fact that I don't like the race change of the character, I thought he did a really exceptional job. It was almost unnoticeable. And you got Foggy in here, and Foggy is really well casted. He's actually absolutely exceptional. My one gripe is the only thing I found negative about Foggy is when he finds out that Matt's Daredevil, and he kind of just drags out the hatred too long. Like it kind of cripples their relationship for a little bit, and he's super pissed that Matt didn't tell him that he was this Daredevil, and I just felt like that was kind of laid on too heavy. But there's all kinds of stuff in here that's just things you might miss. Like Vanessa cracks a joke about uh being asked out by a guy that had like a white suit and a ascot, And I can't remember what Wilson says to that, but that's what he wears in the comics, like the purple ascot and the white suit. So I thought that was pretty funny. Uh, in here, you also get Night Nurse. You get Claire Temple and Night Nurse, which is kind of like a combination of two different characters from the comics. But Claire Temple goes on to be featured in all the other standalone Netflix shows. Well, not really standalone shows, but all the other little like solo seasons, all the solo series that eventually all come together. But this was the first time you actually see something really mature from Marvel since Blade, uh, in terms of live action adaptation. Because the Punisher movie that came out, that was pretty lighthearted in terms of Punisher. Well, Warzone was pretty brutal, but the other Punisher movie is just. And they actually have the Hell's Kitchen from the comic book, the dark Frank Miller days when Hell's Kitchen was a different place than it is today in New York. Yeah, and the way they explain that in the show is the incident, the alien attack, the thing that happened in the Avengers movie, the big battle of New York, because this has ties to the MCU, just mentions to what happened. You can see like newspapers framed on the wall, and there are some lines of dialogue that refer to it throughout the season. But that's the most you really get out the connections to the movie universe, and that's perfectly fine with me because this is much darker, much mature. This is this is something that is just of its own quality, like an exceptional quality. Like if you were to think like Breaking Bad or some other series that people just really buried themselves into, award-winning series. This is that quality, production wise, acting wise, directing wise. The fighting in here, like there's this one shot, very long one shot hallway fight scene that's absolutely exceptional, and you can see Daredevil getting really tired and still getting back up, throwing punches. Daredevil gets really messed up throughout this series a lot. They really make you feel like he's at risk, that he's in danger, and it just makes him that much more of a hero that he's putting himself out there like this, getting damaged, getting near death. Like he's found in a dumpster at one point, and he goes into like a big showdown with a character Naboo from the comic books, and he just gets really messed up. Like seriously, the blood, the violence, it's pretty hardcore in this show. This show is really dark, and that's the feel it should have. The Marvel Knights, Frank Miller, all that type of Marvel stuff that you can't get out of the movies because the characters in the movies, they're very different in terms of light and darkness. Daredevil's one of the Marvel Knights, one of those darker like Punisher type characters. Not as dark as Punisher, but in that general category, all these guys are street level heroes. And this show just Karen Page is really well portrayed in here. Like I said, the story, they add such layer and depth. I mean, the show does get kind of slow. It slows down, and a lot of people complain that it feels like it kind of drags. But honestly, those slower episodes give so much time to add so much depth and layers to everything, to the world that surrounds them, to the world they live in, and to the characters themselves. You really get fleshed out characters that are complicated and broken. Matt and Matt and Wilson Fisk are the perfect example of two really like they're direct opposites. They're both thinking that they're saving their city. They're going about it in different ways. It's all about like choice, the choice to go about how you do these things. And Kingpin just has all these people that he's using to try to take over the city slowly. And Daredevil's fighting back against this, trying to save it in his own way. He's trying to give Kingpin's pretty much like just trying to change the whole area. He's trying to just get rid of the people that make the neighborhood what it is. He wants to, you know, enrich the neighborhood, change it, give it a complete overhaul. That's his version of changing the city, is getting rid of the people. And Daredevil's is all about like letting people have their freedom, their choice. And if they screw that up, he's gonna go out and take them down. It's just two really like directly opposite opposing views, and been very similar in fashion because both of them, they want to save their city. It just, there's so much in here. Stick, the Battle and Jack stuff they show in the past, Kingpin's childhood, the stuff between Kingpin and Vanessa. Like, he's really soft when it comes to her. Like, it, it just shows that other side to him. Like, it's such a double edge. I mean, one side's all soft and the other one's just cold, brutal. And the costume, the Daredevil costume, when he finally gets it, and the way that he gets it in here, like the way that he gets it is realistic, believable, and the costume itself, it's more tactical, less flashy, less like the leather and stuff that was in the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck. This one's more tactical. It can take damage, and you know the sort of helmet or cowl. It's designed to take. It's designed, you know, to provide some protection. And there's just the show is just amazing. And this show is easily better than any of the Marvel movies out there. Probably better than any comic book movie. The way Daredevil uses his skills, the way Matt uses his skills to detect lies, incoming attacks, prevent attacks, read people's heartbeats. It's really well played out. It's just you can't get quality like this anywhere else. You got shows like Agent of Shield, Arrow, Flash. Well, Flash is more like kind of like fan service, and Arrow's just the thing is too. One thing that wired me about coming in this, especially watching it too, is that you know Wilson Fisk and Daredevil, they often went on about having to save the city. It bothered me a little because that seems to be all Oliver Queen ever goes on about in Arrow. But here it's much better. It's much better in this show because this is on Netflix. This is of a different quality. You can do all different kinds of things, and they really push the envelope for like a more mature rating, a more mature show. And the choreography on this show, it's better than any of the other superhero shows or TV shows for that matter that I've seen, and in many ways a lot of movies too. This is hands down the best Marvel live action character brought to screen, big screen and small screen. A lot of ways I actually think it's better than any superhero movie. The only thing that might, stand next to it is something like Watchmen or Blade in terms of quality fights and all that. But here you really get to flesh out characters, get to really get a strong bond with all of them, not just the hero, the villain too. and all the other little side characters in it. Everybody is exceptional. It's amazing. I would rate this show an 11 out of 10. Yeah, an 11 out of 10, which is a number nobody else is going to get because it has to go beyond 10. Because I've rated some things 10, but this is beyond that. When I rate something like a Flash episode an 8 or a 9, it's nowhere near on this level. And, I've rated some of the Marvel movies like a solid 10. Like Iron Man, I've rated a 10 because, in terms of like accuracy to the comic books, the portrayal, the stuff like that. But here, this one gets an 11 out of 10 because just nothing can compete with it, nothing can compare to it. It is absolutely amazing. So, comment. Tell me what you thought of this. What do you think of the Daredevil show? Hopefully, you like it, even though recently it's come out that it's been canceled. I haven't had any reviews on any of this stuff. I only started my channel, after all that negative BS. Uh, anyways, like, subscribe, comment, share your opinion. How broken hearted are you that this got canceled, man? Seriously, this was the best. The best of the best. Check out my GoFundMe link. Check out my PayPal link. Those are ways to support my channel. I'm not monetized. If you want to show support, I'd greatly appreciate it. Anything helps. But stay awesome. Rock on.